Will now come to order. Mr. Brandon, are you ready?
I'm ready.
We will start with some new business and item number 1, the zoning text amendment, urban design, neighborhood compatibility, ordinance, and mural design. Mr.
Last-
Brandon.
At our last meeting or in November, we looked at a draft ordinance regulating murals. I think we circulated a draft. We talked about incorporating that possibly into a new zoning chapter or under an urban design chapter. We circulated it and Ms. Witz had some additional comments. I'm going to hand out the draft of the ordinance again.
Do these have my comments incorporated or not?
I do.
Oh, I meant have my comments then incorporated into, okay, thanks.
Yes, they are shown in capital and the crossouts are shown as corrections. So essentially what the ordinance does is try and set up what a definition of a mural is that would go under a potential chapter under. You don't got one? Somebody
Here.
hold it?
No, I'm good. If you do have an extra one, I'll take it back. Thanks. Thanks.
Extras. Okay. So essentially, this would be an ordinance that we're recommending be part of a chapter under urban design guidelines. And what it does is set up a definition of a mural, what the theme of the mural is in terms of it being respectful for to the community. It has to be protected by certain First Amendment rights. We have a subsection on location, design, materials, the process itself, and then some preservation and maintenance references and enforcement provisions. I won't read the whole thing. Ms. Witz basically made some minor suggestions to move a couple items around as far as the process and enforcement. What I would ask is this planning commission take a look at it, and if you have any additional comments. We talked about having a public hearing scheduled for it, and I was hoping to have a draft, an additional section on neighborhood compatibility. And we've talked about this on several occasions as far as the need possibly for an ordinance that would address potential house designs coming into the community. And all, again, dates back to the House Bill 538 mandate that says we are obligated now to permit manufactured and modular housing in any residential district in the city. It doesn't say we can't regulate it, but we do have to treat the regulations fairly and uniformly across the city. So one suggestion was to come up with a neighborhood compatibility ordinance that would evaluate the compatibility of these housing structures in the context of their neighborhood. And it would be somewhat modeled after ordinance with Cambridge based on the neighborhood compatibility worksheet, which would evaluate designs based on age of the neighborhood, setbacks, living area, land use.
Do we have a copy of that?
Number of stories. You circulated it before, but
I just have.
Yeah, you wouldn't have.
Okay.
It's not your fault.
I only ran 2 copies of it. I know I circulated, but get more true. So it talks about various characteristics such as setbacks, living area, predominant land use, number of stories, parking access, architectural style, architectural features, roof design, and so forth. And I've not been able to put that into a format that could be considered an ordinance format. It shouldn't be too difficult. It's just a matter of time at this moment. But that would be, in staff's recommendation for you is to consider a neighborhood compatibility ordinance. This is what it looks like. And really, I think coming more relevant, for example, I've gotten a call this week on a vacant lot on 3 Winter Quarters Drive, which is basically a block down. I believe the Hickmans may live at the corner. And there's a vacant lot. Actually, I think our former city manager lives in the next house. So it's a vacant lot. So I received a call. And their first choice, as an example, was to install or build a house such as this on the vacant lot, which is a 1-story ranch style house. I did express that we may have concerns about that. So the second option would be to come back with a 2-story, fairly flat facade house. And I said, well, this probably could be referred to the planning commission for consideration. But I think it hits home that we do need, I think, a neighborhood compatibility ordinance. In the absence of a historic district program and historic district guidelines, I feel it's important that we look at how we evaluate these homes that are coming into the community. We support affordable housing, but we also, I think, have a very rich heritage in terms of our historic structures that there should be some, I think, evaluation of these structures as they come into our neighborhoods as if they're compatible or not. Because I think it will preserve property values and enhance our existing housing in our neighborhoods. So that's where that's at. But the mural ordinance, I think there were minor changes, Ms. Witz. I don't know if you want to talk about some of the changes you recommended or.
Sure. My, I guess biggest concern when I saw their first draft and what I had pointed out, that I thought should be changed was just making sure for enforcement, if somebody puts up a mural that's not approved, or if somebody doesn't maintain a mural that has been approved and it's starting to look bad, that they're both considered violations under the main zoning ordinance under 230, just so everything is treated the same as far as the enforcement goes. That was really my main change.
If you have any comments or suggestions, please let them or forward them on, and we'll keep moving forward with it.
I guess just one question is, you know, we have 2 existing murals now. Are they gonna be automatically grandfathered or like?
I'm sorry, what's the
provision for
question?
that? There's 2 existing murals now. Are they gonna be required to comply with the ordinance as written, or are they kind of grandfathered in as being existing?
Well, they certainly would be grandfathered in. I think there could be aspects of the ordinance such as whether they maintained or not could be, drawn into the ordinance as far as potentially not keeping it up or.
Yeah, they would have to be, wouldn't they? As
Yeah,
far
if the
as
ordinance passes.
Maintaining. them.
Otherwise, it becomes a property maintenance issue, and that's probably hard to try and enforce a property maintenance issue on peeling paint, but.
I guess it's the disclosure to both ordinances are on buildings that are maintained by members of this commission, so. That's.
I think there's certainly no question that the murals that have been done in the town so far are very beautiful, very tasteful, well done. But the question is, should there be some oversight in the future for future murals versus graffiti?
Just for a matter of protection, it should be down the road. We don't have a crystal ball. Right?
Snow, we'll do a mural ordinance like this.
What?
The Snow will have a ordinance like this for murals as well.
I'm not
They
familiar
have
with
a
Snow Hill.
design- If I'm not mistaken, they do have a design guideline.
I believe they have a historic preservation commission,
do.
actually.
Yeah.
So I think they have to get approval through that.
I think they have a timeline.
Cambridge had a mural ordinance. I think part of it originated from Cambridge. And they have a rich heritage of murals in that town.
Essentially, this body becomes the approval body for murals.
Yeah, and that was one of the suggestions that I think Ms. Witz brought up, at the fact that the way it was written initially was that staff would make that determination if a mural was compatible. Well, I took that out, that they would be referred on to the planning commission automatically. I think you would be a.
Does anyone have any kind of input whether or not I don't want to make it more than what it is. You know, I had sort of had this in my mind that it would be, you know, a very simple guideline and we're done with it. But to put it on the planning commission, I'm, you know me, I'm all about getting the citizens involved, that what we may approve, they may think we've lost our mind. Is it not appropriate to have some public input, whether they choose to come to a hearing or not?
Well, we would advertise it on the agenda, put it out for, you know, the public on the website to attend the public hearing, our meeting. It's not, as it's presented, a public hearing like a zoning map or zoning text amendment would be, to where you notify adjacent property owners, advertise in the paper. If you want to go that route, that's possible, but staff's opinion, that's probably a little overkill.
Yeah, and the flip side is I wouldn't want to hold anything up, you know, just because of getting the public involved, even whoever the property owner is that is having the mural installed, to say, oh, no, now we've got to wait 30 days for the notice of the hearing, et cetera, and then 2 months down the road, we're still waiting. So I get that too.
Yeah, I added the provision that once we receive the application, we would schedule it within 30 days to the planning commission. Now, if you decide to table it, then that could be another 2 weeks to 30 days
Yeah.
before it would be acted on. I mean, you could even go further and say, if you deny it, it could be appealed to city council if you would want it written that way. And that's been done before in some provisions.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to complicate matters. You know, to me, it was fairly straightforward and cut and dry. Mr. Mayor?
Good evening, Todd Knock. Oh, it's not on. Good evening, Todd Knock, 222 Laurel Street. I thought the expectation for the mural legislation was that you all would draft it based on what you like or what you thought, and then it would come to the mayor and council. Then, of course, we would still have to have a public hearing. But I completely understand what you're saying. Before we even get to that, you know, citizen input would be required. So I don't know how you all would work it out, but I agree with you that before you all chop at the bit and throw all of this stuff together, you definitely want to hear what the citizens have to say, what they want to see in it, what they don't want to see in it, what they want it to contain, and what they want to leave out. So I believe in my heart that you all should probably table this until your next meeting, where you all can sit down and you can figure out, or Mr. Brandy can make suggestions on how you all can get the information out to the citizens to say, hey, we want your input. Because ultimately, I don't think that you all doing a public hearing or even us doing a public hearing is going to be extremely effective.
As in anything in the past, you're probably right, because we don't have a large volume, you know, at a public hearing.
So what I think here the process is that we'll put this out for public consideration input as far as the ordinance itself. And obviously, the ordinance then goes to the city council for action. That's how the process will unfold in terms of its adoption. But the question is, does the city council want to review the murals after the planning commission acts on it? What I was asking about.
I'd really like to see it as straightforward as possible, because I don't, like I said, I don't want to blow this thing out of proportion. That it should be, in my opinion, pretty basic, pretty straightforward. It either it is or it isn't, you know, compatible. And as long as they furnish like this,
I don't think he's gonna,
maintaining it, et cetera, and just the typical questions. And I know you can't get everything that you want, but I don't want to see it dragged out either, you know, just for the purpose of the property owner. And I'm thinking, you know, we put this thing in May, and it's going through the planning commission, and then it's going to go to the city council, and God forbid there's some questions along the way. Time-wise, now we're getting into fall. Are these temperatures going to affect, you know, the installation?
adoption process for any zoning text amendment is that you have to have a public hearing, we have to give advance notice. The public's invited, then goes to the city council for 2 readings and public notices,
Yeah,
and final action. That's just for the adoption of the ordinance.
Right, but I
right,
think we're
and I
talking
get,
past that.
Yeah, we're talking about like.
Yeah, and that's
it's gonna
standard.
cost us the mural.
that part I get, that's pretty much protocol. I'm just trying to narrow it down for the whole process of when somebody applies, fills out the application for a mural.
I mean, as long as we have a proper.
How do you adequately
I would
represent the
streamline this
residents
whole
in
thing.
this process in a streamlined manner?
Yeah, and just,
Well, we simply have to put it out on the website, advertise it on the, beyond that, you know, we can notify adjacent property owners, put a sign on the property, put the image up on the city's website saying this is being considered as a planning commission meeting. You know, beyond that, I'm not sure what else I can do.
That'd be similar to like the Board of Zoning Appeals process.
Like a zoning map amendment or a zoning text amendment.
just as long as it's streamlined. Let's not make this more than what it is.
Well, I guess to your concern, like if this body is responsible for approving, I would say like the images, so they have to provide the image as part of that approval. And you and the council would all be able to see that image, and if you guys disagreed with something about it, I mean, certainly would carry weight for you guys coming to this meeting and saying, hey, you know what, guys, we really, you know, have some concerns about this mural, and we're not sure it should be approved as is. And then that would maybe keep it from being a multi-step.
The key, I feel like the key to all of this is that when you all receive the concept drawing, we receive the concept drawing too. Just as when you all receive your agenda for this meeting, we all receive the mayor and council receive the agenda and your items for this meeting. As long as that works in tandem, because I don't mind being a resident in this situation and emailing you all and saying, hey, I don't like X, Y, and Z. You know, I don't think that anyone in elected office wouldn't mind being a resident and saying, hey, I don't like this. So I'm not gonna speak for the body and say, oh, no, it doesn't need to come to us. But just as I've talked about last night, communication is key. And as long as things are communicated, sent out in a decent manner, in a decent amount of time, I think that we won't run into that. But that's gonna be relying on staff, making sure that everything gets to us and, you know, even saying, hey, final call for concerns.
Yeah, I think that.
As long as that all works, I don't see where there's a problem.
As a resident, I feel like planning and zoning, you guys are here for a reason. I think you guys should make a decision on this. What it is, approve the mural, don't approve the mural, that's your job, in my opinion, as a citizen. I don't think the council needs to be involved in making that decision. That's planning and zoning.
We can reach out to you as residents if we have concerns.
If there's a,
Okay, well, that would certainly streamline it.
I don't see why we need to get more people involved in this than we do. This is a mural, it's a planning and zoning issue. You guys are planning and zoning, and trust me.
Okay. So with that being said, with the understanding that it would stay within the Planning and Zoning Commission, we would put the word out
Same notices and information that.
as
would be
typical,
sent to
and
the
then,
planning commission, would be sent to city
and that's
council,
it.
staff, other staff.
I would add to that, there should be some sort of appeal process in place. If I don't like the mural that's put up at Blue Heron Medical, and I want to appeal that, there should be, I should have some recourse as a resident.
And that's already built into the code, though. If there's a decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission that, it is disagreed with, that can be appealed if that person has proper zoning.
Well, yeah, that's why if you guys are planning and zoning, trust the decision as a resident.
So, if you have any comments, send them back to staff and the final draft will be circulated next month. Before the adoption process.
That's speaking about mural design. Are we, I guess, are we still talking about the neighborhood compatibility too, or?
If we can get the draft together, we'll circulate it at the next meeting.
I just wanted to comment in support of that because, I mean, you know, at Board of Zoning Appeals, I kind of forced that issue on a property, in lieu of having this. And I think the result, as the structure stands now, I think it worked out. Putting that driveway around the backside made it more compatible with the neighborhood. It was a stretch to do it, you know, on Seventh and Cedar.
Well, in that particular case, it was not an appeal of the compatibility of the
Yes.
house itself. It was a variance issue with the setback, which is why it got to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
And I was able to use that as rationale to make it more compatible with the neighborhood because of the setback.
Yeah.
But it would be better to have this, say, hey, there's no other houses with a front yard driveway in the entire neighborhood. You shouldn't have one either, because not every case is gonna need a boundary line adjustment, right? Like that was it just happened to happen.
Yeah.
So yes, actually, with, you know, as soon as possible, I fully support it.
I think it is rather urgent myself. We'll try and get it together as soon as we can.
Okay, Dan, do you need a motion on this?
No, I don't
Okay.
think it's necessary at this point.
Okay, is there any questions on that before we go on to item number 2? From anybody? Thank you, Erica. Okay, item number 2, the Wawa conceptual site plan prepared by Dynamic Engineering.
We've been in conversations with the Dynamic Engineering and other staff and companies involved with the initial review of potential site plans for a Wawa retail store at the corner of Stockton Road and US 13. They have circulated a concept plan for informal discussion only at this point. That's been circulated, I think, to you, and I have additional copies that I can hand out. There are still some engineering hurdles and issues, obviously, that I think we're all aware of, such as the highway intersection, Highway 13, Stockton Road intersection, where we all know there's been a number of accidents, lots of fatalities over the past several years. And that intersection design process, you know, although it appears to have been moving forward, moving forward, what we're hearing now is that because of budget concerns, SHA is not moving forward at the present time for engineering review of services, site plan design, and the like for that intersection. So I don't know exactly where that stands, other than what I've been told in the last 2 weeks, that it is not being funded or it's still on hold. We don't know anything more than that, at least I don't, staff perspective. But beyond that, the other concern is water pressure. They did a flow test of two to three fire hydrants in the vicinity there. There's a fire hydrant right at the Centro station and 2 others in the vicinity of that area that they did flow tests on. Right now, the water pressure and flow for gallons per minute is probably half of what they may need for a retail store at that location. So they were reaching out to the fire marshal's office to determine if a booster pump can possibly solve that need. But then the question is, does that have another impact on the surrounding water flow through the other adjacent pipes? And in that vicinity, there are several dead-end water pipes that, you know, from an engineering perspective, should all be looped in, which may increase and enhance water pressure, not only for that area, but for the other subdivisions and future growth. We're not sure if that should be part of the study, or whether there could be contributions from the private sector to help pay for those improvements. So there's additional conversations that we're scheduling with the engineering companies, with our engineering on contract, GMB. They have a hydraulic model that they think they can do some hydraulic modeling of the water system
that also is a design issue as far as water pressure, water flow. But beyond that, they show a concept plan, showing the retail store, additional, I believe, 24 feet of right-of-way dedication, make that a 4-lane on Stockton Road across the frontage of that property. Other than that, it looks like a fairly straightforward design for a retail combination gas station. But those are the two hurdles that I think we see at the present time as far as this moving forward. So this is just for informal discussion to bring you up to date where this is at. And if you have any comments, we'll be free to pass those on. I think the team was trying to connect with the team, maybe listening to Zoom, but I think they may have intended to come tonight, but I'm not sure if that's, we got the message out late, so that's where we're at beyond their participation possibly here with the team. So if you have any comments, questions, we'll be glad to try and answer them.
Does anybody have any comments or questions on, the draft?
I do.
Okay. Why does that not surprise me?
I'm a little bit behind the 8 ball, just kind of getting up to speed on this. But I guess a concern I've had, I mean, any development on the highway, and I haven't had a chance to go and look at the comprehensive plan to address this question. But it came up just seeing this is the first time I'm seeing this today. Do we have any, I guess, does the comprehensive plan push for a service road of any kind? I guess my concern being, there are other commercial lots between here and the Pertrick Ford dealership. And, you know, if that area comes to fruition, becomes more of a developed area with multiple businesses and maybe other kinds of, you know, development, you know, we could just be, you know, we fix one problem with this intersection, do we cause another one later because we don't have good access to these other properties? And so I guess my question being, you know, in the existing comprehensive plan, is there any push to have service roads along the highway to help control the flow from these intersections? I mean, I see they're putting in their own access to the rear, but you know, I don't know if that's going to continue down to the properties that are going on past this property.
You say service road, you mean expand the highway onto the property?
So like, I guess the best example I have is they have them everywhere in Texas. Like you have the highway and then there's always a slower traffic service road that diverts like your local traffic. So like you don't have these constant, like the Route 13 corridor south of town is constant, every single business opens onto the highway. That's not ideal, right? Like then you have potentially more accidents, you know, people pulling out directly into traffic as opposed to having a service road, like exactly where this driveway is in this picture, where people get off at the planned intersections that are designed to handle the traffic load, and then they get onto the service road to access all of the properties, like in this case, between Stockton Road and Sheep House Road.
You're talking, for example, like Princess Anne.
Yeah, like so what they're doing, what they have in Princess Anne between Royal Farms and McDonald's.
But with that being said, they're still gonna be directing, and I'm thinking Rofo and New Church, how you go out on 13, and I think it's sort of like Stockton Road, that intersection is a nightmare as well. That they're directing the traffic out of a Wawa onto Stockton, onto this light, yay, nay? And that's how it's gonna be directed, whether it's coming out onto 13 or onto Stockton Road. I think the one that you're describing is when I'm looking at the plan, that's gonna be sort of like a delivery entrance. Delivery only, whether it goes all the way through, maybe just for, they've got enough just for maybe a truck turnaround.
Is that a road right there?
Well, I think the concept that you're talking about, if I understand it, would be that service road where this driveway is now located could be further extended southward, provide access to additional properties that could be subdivided off. And I think that's part of the concept. And there was talk about a second parcel, possibly for a fast food chain store at one time to be further subdivided off that property. So yes, that I think is a valid concept. And that's something I think we could look at, making it a requirement as it moves forward, that be established as a potential public right of way or a private road with full easements of access to other properties and address it that way. I think that's a good point though.
Where does state highway come into play? Would they not have a say
In terms of private property access road,
in regards to the service road and how this
well,
directional
this
traffic would be
design
used?
probably meets their minimum standards for offset for the intersection, additional right-of-way widening, right turn, left turn lanes. From that standpoint, it probably meets minimum state highway standards. The
Well,
intersection.
I think as we look at at how they have done it in Princess Anne, there at the Royal Farms, VDOT down 13, I think you would go where you can go. If you can get on, get on. It doesn't really have any rhyme or reason versus in Maryland and the way they did it at the Royal Farms there in Princess Anne.
I think it's very similar to
Would-
the concept of Princess Anne, except it doesn't have that rear access where
Yeah,
it
but
winds back to the front.
is that now the minimum? When you're referring to the minimum from the state, what they would require? I mean, that to me doesn't seem like it's a little more than the minimum required.
So they're adding these additional lanes here, so you're gonna have,
Well, yeah, that's been
and then you're
mentioned
gonna
from
enter
the
back
get-go.
here. So I guess,
My concern is that, you know, we can sit here and talk till the cows come home, but if the state says, no, this is the way it's gotta be. But your point is well taken, I totally get it. But,
Well,
Yeah.
I think this would solve your concern though, as long as this road in the back is extended, if we were to have more businesses come in, if that gets extended into the other businesses, that would give you your service road. And you could also have other roads that actually go to 13 if you really needed them. On the other side of the businesses or whatnot.
yeah, and I just pulled up the county map, that entire area that I'm talking about is designated as a growth area for the most part, so that's, I guess, making sure that we address.
Direct access off 13 will never be, probably provided. But they will have to have access to another interior road, additional property they're subdividing.
I'm fairly confident that they'll get it worked out. I don't see what's, I just don't see a big issue with how that traffic flow is gonna be at the end of the day.
I was hoping that a representative would be here, because I did wanna ask, is there any ability, since the state is pretty much, I mean, we're hearing from our county.
Could you guys hear us?
Oh.
Hear us on the phone?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Cool.
Go ahead.
Yeah. We're all here listening.
So have you followed some of the comments then that are being mentioned?
For the most part, I would say. Yes, yes, we can. So, I guess question number one, was with regards to traffic light. We've been working with the county commissioners to find other sourcing, for funding for the traffic light. They're going the federal route right now. They're definitely making it number one priority to find funding to place that traffic light on corner 13 Stockton. So, I mean, we've been working diligently on it. And definitely does not have the funds for it. And we're looking for other methods through the county commissioners and the congressman to figure out how to get that traffic light funded.
The idea of a service road on the backside of the property to provide access to other additional parcels, is that a concept you've considered? Is that something that can be made possible?
Yeah, that's the intent. And the intent is, whatever is staying with the current property owner, he's gonna have the right to tap into that service road, access road for future, uses in the future, yeah, correct.
Does the design as it's presented now, in terms of the additional right-of-way dedication and the widening to 4 lanes, does that meet minimum state standards in your opinion?
Okay, question for Connor.
It's not currently designed for public dedication, and the biggest reason for that is that stream that runs through the property. And so in that wooded area, if you're looking at the concept to the northeast of the site, there's obviously the stream kind of expands and it becomes a convergence point for other streams coming in. And then under Stockton Road, there's some floodplain areas there, and additional environmental concerns
question more about the widening of Stockton Road? Is that what you were getting at?
Whether that met state minimum standards, SHA
Oh,
standards.
so Pat, I think you answered with regards to access road, yeah, they're talking about
I
Stockton.
did, sorry. Yes, Stockton will meet SHA standards and everything there. We'll have to get this approved through the state as part of this. And actually, the original reason for this exhibit that you're looking at was our initial pass along to SHA as part of our discussions there on the logistics of how we're going to do that. But yes, Stockton Road will meet SHA standards. It'll be reviewed and approved by them as part of our development process here, concurrent with the annexation that we'd be moving forward with there. And so yes.
Okay?
Excuse me, just for the record, your name is?
Sorry, I'm Hunter McManus with Dynamic Engineering.
With
the,
Dynamic.
engineer record.
This name here.
Thank you.
The other aspect of the development is obviously annexation. It doesn't have to be approved by city council. It's a 6-month process. They indicated they may be moving forward with that in January, early February, so that's the other
The
side of it.
latest update there is we're just working through the subdivision process with the county. We would be already through it at this point, but initially we were relayed that we could do a simplified forest stand delineation, forest conservation plan, which would have expedited the process. And unfortunately, they decided we have to split that up. It's the same in the grand scheme of things. It just takes a little bit longer. So we'll hope to have that minor subdivision approval. I would hope next month is really what we're hoping for there, and then we can move right into the annexation from there.
The minor subdivision is being administered by the county along with the forest conservation requirements, correct?
Correct, and the reason for that is actually the property owner here that's going to be holding onto the remainder of the property just was unwilling to annex into the city at this time. Not sure fully why, but essentially because of that, we had to subdivide up front, and then we're annexing the subdivided portion and then moving forward that way. So a little out of order from the preferred way of doing things, but it's kind of what we had to do in this scenario.
Mr. Mayor has a question.
So, just to speak about the annexation process and getting an annexed property in front of the city council. You know, the one thing that we have to be mindful of is the council does have action items on their agenda. So it is something that you definitely want to get in before we start working on our budget items. Because it could very easily get lost in the sauce. Granted, we'll start working on the budget at the end of March, beginning of April. So really, you know, we're saying it's a 9-month process, completely understand that, but we don't want this to be prolonged any longer than it already has. So my recommendation would be to really get this ball moving before, not that it's too late, but before we have to delve into other things to keep the city running properly.
Any other comments?
I have a question. Rather than a stoplight at that junction between Stockton Road and 13, would a standard J turn, it would be much more cost effective, it would serve the purpose. Would that be suffice to the gentleman, to the folks at Wawa and their developer?
What turn?
A J turn?
They're
Just a
becoming
sta-
quite
Yeah, just a standard J turn. All it
They're
would be-
becoming quite popular along 113 and whatnot.
It would prohibit direct cross traffic from Stockton Road across 13 into Pocomo. Folks going northbound would simply be able to turn left. There would be no cross traffic on 13 from that Stockton Road. It would be just a standard left-hand turn. Folks wanting to access the Arby's or the Goose Creek store would simply go, we talked about this the other night, would simply go to the light and take a left. There's plenty of access there. There'd be no impeding of fire access to that area, because those guys wouldn't cross there anyhow. It's a cheaper, better, safer alternative, and it doesn't require a traffic light, and it can happen quickly.
Where are we in the process of the traffic light? A couple weeks ago, Commissioner Abbott said that she had reached out to Representative Andy Harris's office, and he was supposed to be in communication with her about potentially potentially helping us get a stoplight there. In that conversation, I also offer to reach out to our state senator, our senator for the state of Maryland, with Commissioner Abbott providing me with the information that she already sent over to Rep. Harris's office. I haven't heard anything more, so I'm wondering, Dan, if you have a status update on the communications with Andy Harris's office. Is it something that myself and the planning commission and the city council, is it something that we need to reach out to them about? Just in case, I don't want us to start taking the K-turn extremely seriously, and then Rep. Harris swoops in and says, hey, here's the money for the light, and then you all have to go back to the drawing board with concepts and all of that. So I don't want us to get ahead of ourselves. So just wondering if there is some sort of status update.
We have not, from the staff standpoint, had any interaction with the other elected officials. I know Commissioner Abbott, also the other commissioners are reaching out, but beyond that, that's all I know about that effort. Certainly, the city officials can make that extension also.
There's a lot of pieces of the puzzle to this pie, as they say, but.
It just seems like it's not waiting on that intersection, so.
Yeah, that we have gone from, water flow to directing the traffic.
I think it comes, as far as alternative designs to a traffic light.
First things first.
SHA considers an alternative such as J-turns acceptable. I think the city would recognize that, because if it's safe from SHA's standpoint, I think the project could logically move forward. If it's still a dangerous situation, SHA would not likely approve it.
Well, I guess the question Mr. Marshall was asking is, not to have them go look at it, but have you guys looked at that and considered that? Is that a potential option that would be acceptable?
We can talk with our traffic consultant. Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the easy answer is, Wawa is gonna, want the traffic obviously coming west to east. They always ask us to check all the boxes first, and if there's something that we can't achieve, then we'll talk about it. So I really can't go up to them now and say, hey, yeah, could you accept this now? Because they want us to really fully vet, getting the traffic light over there. We've been talking with, Mrs. Abbott's office and everyone over there. They still think it's possible. So I think right now we're still going to, make sure that it's fully not capable of being done. And then, we'll talk about the J-turn. I know when we had our call with SHA, probably about a month and a half ago, they did mention, hey, yeah, guys, hey, if we can't do this traffic light, would you be okay with, like 3/4 movements or, whatever, movements that won't allow for the dangerous setting? And, the answer is, probably, but I can't get Wawa to approve it until we fully vet the traffic light.
Okay, that's a reasonable answer.
What's their,
Go ahead.
this isn't my meeting, this is your meeting. What's their reservation on paying for the light themselves?
So, sorry, that part, I'm very, could you repeat that, please?
What's their reservation on paying for the light themselves?
Are they asking a commitment from Wawa's developer to fund all of it, part of it? Or if they don't, it's not a
question, and I apologize. So this is for you, Dan, because I usually like to do this research myself ahead of time, but of course, according to timing of how things played out, I didn't get to, but, you know, I don't, Jenkins Orchard isn't on city water, right? They're just on city sewer. They also don't get city water over there.
They would be on city water and city sewer service.
No, I mean, Jenkins Orchard presently does not receive city water, correct?
Correct.
So, does the comprehensive plan address that? Is there an intent in the comprehensive plan to provide water to that general area? Is that something that's gonna get, you know, that the city's planning to address? Or is that something that would have to happen specifically for this project?
I think generally speaking, the comprehensive plan supports additional growth down Highway 13. I don't think, my recollection is there's nothing in the comprehensive plan that suggests we should not be extending services down that corridor and along Stockton Road. They would have to put in, I think, a force main sewer pump station to accommodate access. I believe there's sufficient access to the sewer, and that does not appear to be a problem. Ultimately, Worcester County, I think, also has to agree to any service extensions as part of their water and sewer master plan. And I have not heard any feedback that's, from the county standpoint, this is not a logical development.
Does anybody have any other questions or comments or concerns for Dynamic Engineering? No?
Any other comments from Dynamic or the team there?
Yeah, thank you all.
Sorry
Thank
about the late
you.
notice. We're glad you could participate. Sorry about the late notice.
Thanks for setting this up, yeah.
If I can
We'll be in
interject
touch.
real quick. Do we need to jump to this? Does Brett have a time commitment? Do we need to jump to that?
Are we ready to go on to number 3? Is everybody on schedule? Does anybody need to be bumped from, okay.
I think we're on schedule, Desmond. I think they get back.
I guess I was asking, because Brett just stepped out. Are we gonna lose Brett? Like, would
No, he's told me to text him when
Okay,
okay.
Very good.
If we can move him up on the agenda, I'm sure he'd appreciate that.
okay, so we're gonna go on to item number 3, the Planning Commission Annual Report, 2024, Summary of Accomplishments, 2024, and the key priorities for 2025.
I believe I just handed that out. Do you have a copy of that report?
Yes.
That's
Every year, the state asks for a summary of activity for the planning commission in the city. It actually may have been due back in July, I'm not sure about that, but as far as the calendar year goes, this is what I felt we are required to report to the state. They collect all these reports, send them on to the General Assembly for their information. And it just highlights some of the major activities that have occurred. They like to know how many homes are being built and whether they're being built inside what they consider the priority funding area, which basically encompasses the entire city with the exception of the areas outside of 113 going further east. We're working on the 10-year comprehensive plan update. There were no really major growth-related changes to the municipal boundaries or extensions of water and sewer services. We did adopt new zoning regulations regarding the regulation of cannabis businesses. That was the major ordinance change this year. Other than that, we have, I think, moved forward with some planning for the Cypress Park and its potential impact from sea level rise and stormwater and flooding. We approved a 3-lot subdivision on Dorchester Avenue. We have 2 homes built on that site. We are looking at a preliminary site plan. We've approved the preliminary site plan for the 37 townhouse project. We're also discussing that tonight. The library is moving forward. They have a groundbreaking, I think, scheduled. Starbucks is underway. That, I think, summarizes the activities for the past year that we would like to have our chair sign off on. So the Planning Commission essentially, I think, it would be appropriate for a motion to accept this report. And then we have to forward it on to City Council. They have to acknowledge receipt of it and then send it on to the state. In addition, we were asked to prepare some additional information on what we accomplished in 2024 as far as the department, some of our initiatives and priorities for 2025. That's for your information. So we would ask the city, or the planning commission, if you could endorse this report so we could forward this on.
Installation of lights around the Cypress Roots tennis pickleball courts.
Cypress Park. Oh, which page are you
It
on?
says Cypress Roots.
Did I put that?
Oh, I see it,
Last
yeah,
line,
number
yeah.
13, yeah.
I do have one question, go ahead.
Should we do a motion to approve, second, and then discussion?
I just have one question on item number 7 on the last page. Dan, have all planning commission board of appeal members completed the Maryland Planning Commissioners Association training course?
I don't think we have at this point.
That's what I would kind of like to have an understanding who has. Everybody has to do it, correct?
They highly recommend it. Is there a
Yes, and
penalty if you don't?
It's very good. My second one is, while we're on that subject, but it's off topic, but real quick, and Erica would probably be helpful on this. One person from the planning commission, at least one, a minimum of one, has to be certified in the open meetings.
Yes.
When we had the state planning commission thing in Chrisfield, and they had mentioned that they were really pushing that. And and Kelly and I were asking, is there something online?
It is online. I can send the link around.
If you would, please,
Yeah.
because I find a link and then it takes me
So I'll
somewhere.
say, I did try
Takes-
to find, like, there was an online link that I found, and then when I tried to access it, it didn't work.
I'm having the
Well, then I
same-
don't know if I'm gonna be able to send it around then, because it's probably the same
problem.
link, but.
The flip side is, just real quick, if there's not, and maybe I'll talk with Mayor Knock about it, is to maybe have a class
A class?
here in
absolutely.
Pocomoke, and we would invite the ones from Chrisfield.
Training session? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that, have it centrally located for those on the eastern shore, just like they had the one in Chrisfield where Ocean City and Snow Hill and Berlin, and we were all there.
They did an open meetings class in Chrisfield?
No, it was just a seminar, a great seminar, but that was brought up.
It was the statewide planning commission organization that sponsored it, and they hosted and encouraged all the local lower shore planning commission members and staff to attend, and they had various topics they discussed.
Yeah, that was one of them, but other than that, and as Jasmine says, do you need a motion on this to accept it?
Yeah,
Okay.
So with Robert's rules, technically we should be making a motion, a second, and then discussing it before voting. I guess is what I was trying to get at a minute ago. So like a member should make a motion, another member should make a second, then we discuss, do we, all points in favor or against, and then voting.
well, you can discuss ahead of the motion,
Yeah.
but Chip's correct. And
Because I do have a point of discussion for it, so I don't.
Go right ahead.
I guess,
Go right ahead.
I guess, so looking at, the list of priorities for 2025, I mean, I have no other, other than what Ms. Tuller said about the, report. But for the list of priorities, I see, like mentioned in here is the, grants for improving sidewalks and school crossings in the vicinity of the high school and elementary school. So I guess I would like to see a priority, whether it be an additional one or a reporting of that one, specifically for the planning commission contributing to the Safe Pass initiative, because the Safe Pass seems to be a top priority for the city council, but a common question, I've seen it discussed among the city council and even coming from city council members, what is you can't just repave the entire town, right? That's financially impossible. So what are the priorities? Now, this one is obviously very much a priority that has been discussed, but it is one priority. So could we, as a body, have a key priority for 2025 of working to address the deficiencies in the code to achieve Safe Pass, and also recommendations based on maybe the comprehensive plan development for what areas of town most need those Safe Pass, because it has to be prioritized.
I think that's part of the Safe Path grant process, and this would be to apply. If think, for funds for the engineering and study aspect of our issues with pedestrian safety, sidewalks, pedestrian crossings, and so forth. So I think that's the first step. And we have this consultant that reached out to us, and he is moving forward with plans to write the grant itself. And at some point, there could be some match requirements from the city, but that's my understanding of the process. Let's do the study first, establish priorities, and then go after the grant money.
For Safe Pass.
Hmm?
For Safe Pass.
For Safe Pass.
So that is not in this list.
The
Or
actual,
what you just stated is not in this list that I see.
I think we
I
made
see what you're
reference.
saying about statement, but we have discussed for Safe Pass.
Under
This was a
item,
discussion when we were talking about sidewalks.
under item 12, we make reference to the sidewalks and
Expand on
working with the consultant. That's what you're referring to. We didn't specifically mention Safe Pass, but, you know, he's going to work on both Safe Pass and the Safe Routes to School grant possibly as well.
So I think, yeah, the safe routes to school, that would be an element of Safe Pass. So I'm talking about the entire, I wish Mayor Knock was in here. Because there, you know, there's discussion of, well, we don't even have pathways to our town's only grocery store, like reviewing the 2014 comprehensive plan talks about like Linden Avenue and 6th Street being major corridors, targeted at traffic, like, I don't remember I'm a little rusty on it, but whether it talks specifically about pedestrian paths. So there doesn't seem to be any guidance that I'm aware of for our city, on addressing priorities for, pedestrian pathways, pedestrian crossings, bicycle pathways. Item 12 is worded specifically for one part of town, which I don't disagree is a priority, but I would like to see us identify all of the priorities so we can have a plan to accomplish the entire Safe Pass initiative, maybe even over a course of time, not just 1 year.
Now, we did identify a number of city priorities with the draft Worcester County Bike and Pedestrian Greenway Trail Plan. We sent a number of those priorities to them, and they are included in their report, which I think is scheduled to go to the county commissioners, if it hasn't already, for adoption. So a number of initiatives and ideas and designs and concerns were presented in that plan. It may not cover all the, I think, school-related concerns we have, but so there's been a lot of planning and thought from our staff standpoint and planning commission input over the past several months on some of these issues, but you know, there's other aspects I think that need work as well in terms of the city's policy on sidewalk improvements, when to make them, how to make them, who's gonna pay for them. You know, we've talked about that, I think, in
Yeah, I
the
think that
past.
we talked about it as a reason why the sidewalks aren't up there at the high school, because of drainage.
So I think we're moving in that direction. If there are specific concerns, you know, now's the time to start putting our ideas together. But they have been, a lot of them have been made known to that county plan. And that's available online if you haven't seen it yet.
We did discuss having like a bridge or a tunnel go to Walmart or such, and something to make it easier for the kids to go over to Newtown Park and such.
And that's, I mean,
That
that's
was a discussion we had 2 days back.
that's the county plan, but I mean, as far as, you know, so I guess I wanna see it as a key priority for 2025 for planning and zoning is, you know, essentially the governing body has mandated that Safe Paths initiative is one of their priorities, but it is a planning and zoning, issue. So I guess what I'm asking for is that it be a priority for planning and zoning as a priority work item listed. And whether that's you or us supporting you, or us coming and coming to you with proposals, I mean, I think,
That Dan could put it forth, we can assist him in any way
Yeah,
that he needs the commission, but I think it's been a talking point for some time for some sort of pedestrian cross to over 13 from the McDonald's area all the way back to.
Yeah, that was brought up as
Then
the number one improvement
That's a
project.
and it's the only grocery store for the area, and I think we've all seen from anyone from wheelchairs to people pushing a cart to people on bicycles crossing over 13, and
so, I mean, what I'm saying, looking at this list, you got 13 priorities, one of them being a specific area of Safe Pass. So what I mean, in my opinion, looking at this, number 2, because number 1, you have to have a comprehensive plan, but I'm saying number 2 should be Safe Pass initiative and addressing the ability, our streets and sidewalks in this city. I mean, that's gotta be I mean, I think I've heard it from the council. I think that has to be a priority for us as a group to address that, because the code is totally deficient on it. I mean,
I don't disagree, and these weren't necessarily put in order of priority. But I think as we work with this consultant and the city council's identified it as a major priority as far as improvements to our infrastructure, I think we'll see results by working with this consultant and identifying priorities and moving forward with pursuing funding. So I think that's going to happen. It's just not necessarily worded, I think, as far as the Safe Path Initiative itself, but you know, we're all going to work toward that goal.
so I guess maybe I'd be happy if you just crossed out in the vicinity of the high school and elementary schools, because just period, work with the consultant to apply for grants and improve sidewalks and school crossings. Period.
Okay, yeah, send me your comments on that. We can incorporate that into it. Again, these were prepared
Leaves
for
the
the
door
benefit.
open for,
These were prepared for the benefit of both the county commissioners, the city council, for your consideration. Not cast in stone as other priorities evolve and become important or less important. We'll certainly adjust staff time and
sure.
assistance to it.
Because, I mean, not to drag this out anymore, but I know you and I had a conversation about a house that was built on 4th Street, and I mean, in my personal opinion, I wasn't on this board, but my personal opinion is, why didn't that house have a sidewalk? And then it's like, well, it wasn't required to have a sidewalk. And then my question is, why wasn't it required to have a sidewalk when it's on one of the major pedestrian paths? And it's because there's nothing requiring it to have a sidewalk. So I think that's a problem in accomplishing, you know, what is a city priority of having safe paths, is there's no requirement to have safe paths.
We do have a lot of sidewalks to nowhere.
Yeah, it's.
If you want to make a firm recommendation to the city council, the city manager, to take a very serious look at how the code is written and how the code is enforced, please do so. Because right now, in situations where they are building on lots in town, our position is that we have not required sidewalk improvements if they're not there now. If they were there and they're in poor condition, we have stated we reserve the right to make the developer put those improvements in, but.
I've always thought if there's a new house going in, or anything, they should put a sidewalk in.
So does that need it,
It's
so
coming to it's coming to that point. I don't know why you know.
instead of flowing up from us then, do we need to ask for the council to flow that down to us? Is that what you're suggesting? Like, instead of it being a priority of planning and zoning, does that need to flow down from the council to mandate that planning and zoning does it?
Yeah, I would say let's take a look at how the ordinance reads and offer your input into it. And if changes need to be made as far as the ordinance, then the planning commission certainly should give support and direction to making changes to the ordinance and let the council decide on how to interpret and enforce it.
It does warrant an update.
It's probably one of the worst ordinances in the entire code.
It was good years and years and years ago, but.
There was an attempt in my research of some of the earlier minutes in the 1990s. There was a concerted effort by the city to enforce and make sidewalk improvements on any new developments. And that's why I think you see sporadic areas having sidewalks in front of them, and then the next lot doesn't. So I think that initiative got lost over the years, or that mandate. So
Well, maybe somebody can refresh somebody's memory that's been around and tell us why or how that happened.
I don't know. I can tell you some of the
That sure would've
developers have
taken a lot
said,
of load off.
I can share with you
Today.
that some of the developers that have built on lots inside town, on infill lots, they said if we have to put $10,000 to $15,000 in sidewalks, they will not build in town.
Well, that was like the Starbucks ordeal, remember when it was brought up for a sidewalk for there, that even a sidewalk from the hotel to Starbucks. I'm sure the people at the
There's
hotel
zero
wanted their
sidewalks.
coffee there, but, and that really hit the fan.
Yeah,
Remember for the
different
sidewalk
economics
that they
and
would-
different
they would shut it down.
yeah, different times, different economics, you know, may make
Yeah.
it easier, but it's a
Well,
problem.
there's a philosophical question too, of whether the municipal body should be providing the sidewalks or whether the private
There's a
property
lot
owner
of,
should.
I don't know, there's just a lot of compromise that's gotta go around to everybody, I think, to make it work.
Mhm. Circling back to the motion, do we have?
Yes, do we have a motion to accept the,
I'll make a motion that we accept the report, with comments on priorities for 2025 to be provided to, planning director via email, for his consideration. Does that work?
do we have a second? favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. Motion
One
to
last
approve.
question on the sidewalks, though. Who's responsible for the sidewalks on Market Street? Is it state or city?
State.
The way the ordinance reads, the city can make improvements, and if you don't, you can put a levy on it. The problem is sometimes the property line itself goes to the back of the sidewalk, sometimes it goes to the front edge of the sidewalk, sometimes it's 3 feet behind the sidewalk.
This is down Market Street.
But I can tell you, that specific case, I can tell you from my parents' experience as property owners on Market Street, that the state does take responsibility for all the walkways on Market Street.
No, they don't.
They did with them because
They
my
did
parents.
for the crosswalks, and I just asked that question because we have a lot there at the corner of Fourth or Fifth that wants to develop. And I asked the question, I said, the state, this is your right of way, these are your sidewalks. And will you make improvements to those? And they said, nope, and here's a section of the code that says we don't have to. And they sent it to me.
So
And we
they,
even take care of the ADA.
They'll take care of the ADA improvements, but that's the extent of it.
because I will
The
say,
sidewalks, but they approved
When-
anyway.
when they did the ADA improvements, though, I know that my parents there was a section of sidewalk that was in poor repair, and that information was provided to the state, and the state replaced that section of sidewalk, and it was unrelated to the ADA improvement. So I mean, I guess it is.
You know, Lord, no,
I'll-
whoever's in
I'll-
charge of
Maybe it's
the
'cause they wrote it out
ship
there.
by then.
I'll forward the email on to you.
Yeah.
But I asked that very question.
That's, I guess that goes into this all being so poorly defined. It's not.
Well, I think, you know, whoever is running the show at the state at the time, maybe
It just blows my mind that they're
Think it's
responsible for the
okay.
roadways, but not the
they can get away
sidewalks.
with it, maybe. Okay, we're gonna move on to old business. Item number 1, the zoning map amendment, correction,
Right.
sustainable community boundary changes.
No action.
As requested by city council, that we're to have a work session.
Nothing new on that. It's not been scheduled yet.
It's what?
It's not been scheduled yet.
Is that gonna be an action by this body or the council?
That's a council work session that the mayor requested.
Okay.
Item number 2, the hardwire construction update.
Building's moving along. I visited the property. Not all the concrete inside the building was in place at that point, but they're still moving forward with it. They're gonna be occupying it by the end of the year.
Good.
We still wanna address the sidewalks, make sure they stay on top of that issue there, and make sure they put the sidewalks back in.
Do you
so-
ever do anything with landscaping?
That's, I think, a plan that's gotta be brought back to the planning commission, so.
They promised me
trust
they'd make
him.
it pretty.
I trust him. I trust George. Okay, item number 3 is Drawbridge Villas. Review of preliminary townhouse building plans.
It was in here.
Review floor plans, facades, conceptual drawings.
Give me- I can call them.
I reproduced the facade that he has the original drawing on. If you recall, I'll circulate the preliminary plan that was approved as well back last year.
This goes back to the previous owner.
Just for information, this is the letter that the planning commission also circulated and sent out regarding the conditions they put on the development
Oh, sorry.
back in
Sitting here
January.
with-
So,
Thank you.
where it's at is, Mr. Davis is here tonight to present a concept plan for at least 6 of the townhouse units, and that's what you see in the handout. We think they're going at the very west end of the development site, where there is a 6-unit layout on the preliminary plan. Some of the issues that remain are identified in the letter that was sent in January, such as we reserve the planning commission the right to review the design, facade treatments, elevation drawings, setbacks, and orientation prior to the issuance of building permits. We want to see what their HOA plan is and what they're reviewing. Mr. Davis says there's an HOA in place, and what we've asked for the planning commission is to take a look at that document to understand what they're monitoring, what they're going to be regulating, make sure they're consistent with city policies and there's no conflict with city policies. And what are their maintenance responsibilities if they're clearly spelled out, such as the stormwater ponds or any other of the private facilities
facilities that they'll be maintaining. We also requested they submit a detailed landscape plan, including fence design prior to the issuance of building permits. I think we can work with them in that respect. Before the occupancy permits are issued, I think you should have the right to review a landscaping plan for the overall site that's being developed. Item 4 doesn't really apply. They're not obligated to follow the conservation ordinance in this situation. There is the issue again with substandard sidewalks. Some are acceptable, some are not. Some are needed, such as along Riverside Drive, which they committed to installing. So there's still the question about, in those sidewalks that are in very poor condition, who's gonna replace them? And I think that's still a valid issue. We want to evaluate the stormwater pond, make sure it meets requirements. We'll think that'll be handled internally. The issue of the cleanup of the past efforts on the site, we don't believe that's an issue. And they will have to have floodplain development permits for at least 2 or 3 of the building pads. So Mr. Davis, I think, was here to present the overall concept, talk about where they're at with it. My conversation with them is they would like to start doing the entire infrastructure in April and be underway shortly thereafter with the construction of at least 6 of the townhouse units. They're apparently going to buy the entire development out and be responsible for all the townhouse development project. So, but we have reminded him that we think it is important to see the HOA documents, to see the HOA restrictive covenants, what their design guidelines are, so we understand how they're gonna monitor and stay in control.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole again.
Davis, you're up. Oh,
So you don't wanna have the issues that you have with public.
trying to squeeze
I
in
know.
there. Going out there? Yeah, I was trying to have food, but it didn't work out.
Floor is yours, sir.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, so, to give you an update, our plan is to purchase the Drawbridge condominium development, sorry, give me a minute.
Did you just?
I'll sprint. See, I'm trying to order food, just tell me. You didn't give me quite enough advance notice. So,
We just zoomed through the item.
37 condos that'll be built, and there are 7 existing. The previous plans, for the actual site had already been submitted, approved, everything is good. We're gonna develop the entire site. So there will not be a question in the future whether to, actually finish the development. Within the first 90 days, we'll be done with the whole site. What we wanna do is we are building a 6-pack of townhouses, and that is our first phase. Those units are shown as the picture you see, and our intent is to, we have a program through the state of Maryland called the Uplift Program. We will receive our letter, knock on wood, from the state of Maryland in the next 7 to 10 days. This program is extremely unique. We are one of the first applicants in the state of Maryland to be qualified for this, and what it will allow us to do is to offer a guaranteed price for people purchasing a home, and that price will be significantly below market value. The maximum amount of our discount is $50,000. I do not want to be quoted tonight as to telling every single person that they will receive a $50,000 discount, because the logistics of how development works, I do not fully comprehend what the end result will be, in the sense that there could be a fluctuation in percentages. But the net result is that the state of Maryland is going to pay to ensure that each one of these properties that we develop, the first 25 units, they will be townhouses. They'll all be 3-bedroom, 3.5 bath. All of these units will be allowed to be purchased at a significant discount to what would be a market rate. This market rate is actually calculated by the state of Maryland. And so what we're talking about is, again, I'm not a wordsmith, so a blue-collar job, if I can call it that. There are income restrictions for some of the units that we sell. This is not affordable housing in the sense that it is meant to be for people that cannot afford a home, but this is for a middle income family in this area.
I can read from the site for a minute to give you a minute to catch your
Sure,
breath if
that's
you like. And actually, CL, this is something I just talked with you the other day about. Primary goal for Uplift is to increase property values and provide wealth-building home ownership opportunities for targeted households by accelerating the pace of development, construction, and sale of quality, affordable housing in low-income census tracts and designated sustainable communities to help close the appraisal gap that occurs in historically redlined communities. Uplift will also accomplish a variety of related goals as well, including increasing home ownership in disinvested neighborhoods, upgrading housing for legacy homeowners in appraisal gap neighborhoods, revitalizing currently disinvested neighborhoods, reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the Maryland housing stock, and expanding employment and entrepreneurial opportunities for Maryland workers and businesses, especially those from historically disadvantaged demographic groups.
Thank you, Chip. That was perfect.
Sounds great.
So, yes. So I think that was a perfect synopsis. So the goal of this community, we're going to sell off 25 townhouses, and they will be at dramatically reduced prices in order to stimulate people moving into an area that was previously not moved into for new construction. That's the easiest way to put it. We will have no changes to the current site plan. So what was brought to you beforehand, we are not looking to change the site plans. There are 37 units. I know one question that will come up, what we're going to do with the units outside of the Uplift program. I would like to operate under the assumption that we will keep those as rentals. And then at whatever point market value allows us to sell waterfront townhouses, I would be more than glad to do so. So currently, I believe we are in an area in which waterfront townhouses will not sell for a normally comparative value to what waterfront townhouses would sell for in other places. When it reaches that, I have absolutely no interest in being a permanent landlord in Pocomoke for units that are obviously best sold on the market. Currently, 2 of the units are on the market for about $280,000 and none have sold. The reason for that is that there is no current HOA or condominium structure, whatever you want to call it. It's, as you can imagine, you would be buying into a complex in which you own 1 unit and the other person that gets to vote on everything controls 42 of the votes out of 43. So, because now it's actually divided by unit count. So 42 of 43 votes would be 1 person. So as you can imagine, no one wants to buy into that. So my goal is we're going to build a 6-unit complex in which we would start selling them off individually, and we would empower the actual home buyer to make decisions on their own. All of the roads, through a discussion with Dan and just your standards, all of the roads will be public. And again, we are actually not changing anything to the current site plan. And all that we're looking for tonight is approval on our elevation drawings and floor plans.
So specifically, the units you plan to hold are the waterfront ones?
Yeah, so the way it works is that we are allowed to allot 25 units to the Uplift grant. And if you look at our site plan, that would mean 2 units on the waterfront. And I want to be very clear, my intent is to do whatever makes logical sense. So if you were to tell me that somebody says, I will purchase a waterfront lot for what would be typically a waterfront townhouse on the Eastern Shore, the answer is those would be for sale as well. What we are thinking, being upfront, is that the units that are not on the waterfront, if applied a discount, would be the more logical units to sell up front through the program, but ultimately, these will all be condominiumized and ideally sold off. So I'm open to some type of combination. I like to always set a lower bar. So if I end up selling all of them, you all would be happier. But if I tell you that I'm going to sell them and I don't, I think it would be a poor starting point. That's pretty much, sorry, I didn't have a ton more. I will tell you just a couple of cool things. We will have a little community playground All the roads are public, sidewalks will be in, there'll be fences around the backyards that are facing, things that,
Maple
face-
Street?
Yeah, thank you. Facing outside properties that should have a backyard. All of the stormwater is currently in place. When we are finished, which will be very quickly, with the site work, my partner will deliver all of the lots completed. Right now, the biggest problem with development is that none of the lots are actually developable. There are 7 that are completed, but not one other lot could Dan actually say you could build on. So our intent is within 90 to 120 days of settlement being ideally in March or April, depending on your choices and other regulatory bodies. March or April would then allow a 90 to 120 day window, and all sites will be ready to be built on. Sorry, just one last thing. They will all be three bedroom, 3.5 bath. You will see that in one of the specifications, we had specs for a deck. I've told Dan, right now, we're going to table that thought. I left them on there in the sense that if somebody wants a deck, absolutely, we will gladly build it. At this current time, there is no expectation that the first 6 units have a deck. Anything on the water, it makes sense to have an elevated deck. Again, higher values, but right now, what we want to do is be able to deliver market rate apartments, or market rate townhouses, pardon me. Also, all of them will have simple fiber.
Of course.
Yeah, I had to do that plug. I mean, it wouldn't be right. They're all about 1,600 square feet. Give or take. And they are currently all slated to be symmetrical floor plans. And that do keep in mind, so it's around 1,500 square feet, but the garage is not included in that square footage.
If I could ask, Mr. Davis, then, this design, as you're seeing now, would be for 6 individual lots. Because the other lots have a pattern of 8, I think, possibly 10 lots configured together. But your first effort would be to build on the very west end of the development where that 6-lot layout is, correct?
Thank you, Dan. That is an accurate depiction of our current plans. I will say, one of my goals in this conversation is what you have in front of you is exactly what we will do, expanded to 8 units as well. So, yes, and Dan and I talked about, we will make sure the city has a depiction of the first phase. But what my goal was to approve the concept of 2-story townhouses with this depiction. And yes, there might be a slight variation on the eve of one point when we make it 8 units. There's a building with 9 units, there's a building with 8 units, there's a building with 6 units. So yes, I would make sure that the permit process goes through Dan for each different building. I have drawn a 6-unit building, but that depiction is exactly what you should expect for all of the units that we will build. Is that fair?
Yeah, and if there are design changes, the suggestion would be that the planning commission review any major design changes to these proposed plans.
Exactly. So if it looks drastically different to Dan from what is here, I absolutely would come in front of you again, but I can tell you that what you're looking at, just so we're all on the same page, there's windows and the doors. This is a pretty standard garage. We're talking about a combination of vertical and horizontal vinyl siding, and then we're looking at stack stone on the bottom as an accent. That depiction will carry throughout all of the units. So the intent is to build the other units shortly after you build the 6th unit. The 4th unit sold out will begin construction on the next complex. Everything will be 75%. So once I sell 75% of the current building, I will immediately start construction on the next. The nice part about the uplift program is that they actually fund the project ahead of time. So it incentivizes us to build when economics would not normally suggest that we do so.
Item number 4 in the planning commission's letter of February 14 on the forest conservation ordinance may apply to this site? Since more than, are we,
It's exempt from that.
pardon me?
It's exempt from that.
Okay.
Do know all site plan logistics, if I can phrase it that way, have been run through the city already, so this includes stormwater, flood elevations, soil conservation, anything like that. And don't get me wrong, Dan has given us very specific requirements to adhere to all of that, but we have gone through all of those processes.
So what's required of us tonight?
Approval of the overall design for the 6 townhouse units, including the floor plan, layout, elevations, as presented to you. As provided to you earlier, I believe we sent the entire package by email. I think you got that today, unfortunately. Mr. Choquette.
Where would questions, so like, I mean, there's other items here, and I know they've been discussed, like in the past, about like, sidewalks and, even like the.
We have the sidewalk issue, and that'll come, I'm assuming at a later date, the sidewalk issue, the trash,
pickup.
the location, how that was all gonna play out, and then where it was gonna go, how it was gonna be disguised. The play area, I think you've already addressed.
I think you're also alluding to the HOA guidance that you're going to be submitting a document to the planning commission to understand what your HOA is regulating, what are your design or restrictive covenants, so we understand, what's gonna be regulated by both the HOA and the city in terms of moving forward. For example, if you have a double frontage running, let's say, Maple and the interior street, you can't put a shed in the backyard, things of that nature.
Yep.
That's what we're getting at.
And but the only reason, the only reason why we bring that HOA up is that we've had some real, you maybe already know, we've had some real nightmares.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
this is why we really want to make sure that we get it.
Supremely reasonable. So
Not that we expect it, but
yeah, absolutely. So I do want to tell you just something so that you're all privy to this. There is already a homeowners association. So that cat, yeah, that's it's out of the bag. Like there is a current homeowners association. I was talking to Dan about this. The goal of our project is to work with you and to adapt what is there. Do know there's already a homeowners association, so all of those regulations have already been set. I am in no way telling you I will not be glad to talk to you about that. But what my goal is, so each individual would be responsible for their own trash.
We offer trash pickup, but
Yeah, which is fine. That'd be great.
But that was a problem in Butler's Village, right?
that's just going down another route.
But I mean-
Well, sorry, to be clear, their intent here is, we also don't need a homeowners association. It only requires a 100% vote to eliminate a homeowners association, which conveniently, we have a 100% vote. So we can do that if that is convenient. We are in, yeah, so like, but at the same time, I also understand that it is not ultimately my community. Excuse me. It is not my intent for this to be my community, it's my intent for this to be somebody else's community. We do plan on keeping some rentals, that's fine, we adhere to those. So, what I was hoping for is to have, and Dan has been great about giving us bullet points of like, if you have any concerns with the already existing homeowner association or condo association, if you wanna send those over, I think we bullet point those.
But they should be. It's just like as nice as the firehouse is,
Thank you.
and I
That's
drive
a
by it,
tremendous
but
amount.
you know what, Brett, the first thing I see? A dumpster.
Yeah, okay,
You
yeah,
know,
that's cool, that's cool.
And I'm sorry, but that's
Yeah,
probably
that's
that's probably
cool.
the female DNA in me, more
that's
than
cool.
anything.
Look, I
Maybe.
understand. I appreciate that. And-
Well, it's
and-
just-
and
I
it's
thought-
cool. We also keep in mind that, the goal is that we want to have public feedback. We would like this to make something, this is supposed to enhance downtown so that all of our project, everyone's projects, do better. That's what this goal is, and this property is absolutely not in any way the property we would pick to say this will be the most income producing property that we could do. But I say that not as like, this is not a martyrdom. What this is I would love that feedback. Please know, our goal is to start construction in March or April. And we would really appreciate if there is anything specific that needs to be noted. I'm glad to come back in front of you, ideally via Zoom. We can fix your internet if need be, but like, you tell us what we can do to make sure that we adhere to that. My goal is that tonight, from Dan and I's conversation, is like, you are conceptually, this project meets the standards of the planning and zoning. The logistics of how we escort the trash off the property or the mail is something we can talk about, but not something that prohibits us from getting financing. And that was my goal,
Right.
if that makes sense.
I only bring them up because they're in the forefront in my brain.
Absolutely,
I
and
just-
they should be.
I'll go home thinking about that and be
No,
bugging me the rest of the night.
No, understood.
But no, and I just remember in the approval process from the previous owner, the current owner, before you go to settlement, and feel like sometimes it's whatever hands it's in right now, I don't know.
Yep.
But, anyway, I know how that was part of the discussion and, one of the guidelines set in the approval process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's
So-
the only reason why I wanted to make sure, what was gonna be carried over, in some of those, requests that we made in the very beginning of the process, so.
Absolutely.
Everything, Dan, you're comfortable with pretty much everything is carrying over as is that we approved originally from the, preliminaries?
Yeah, the preliminary plan is approved. We think it serves as a construction document. I have recommended that we do a developer's agreement, which we'll ask the SWITS to review, which lays out obligations and responsibilities and timeframes and so on. And we'll be working on that draft, but, tonight he's asking for approval of the facade plan. But as a follow-up, we are asking to see the HOA documents, to submit them before he obtains an occupancy permit, and to see the landscaping plan, which I think are the important components. So there's no stone left unturned.
Yeah.
And that occupancy permit's, wanted. So
Yeah,
I will-
okay,
I will
so
say-
you and I are on
yeah.
the same page, this, thank you.
Absolutely. I will say this, if you do not mind, there is an HOA document that has been accepted by the city of Pocono. If you do not mind, I would appreciate if you all had revisions to that document, for you all to send revisions rather than us to start over from scratch, if that's fair. I was not here for this process, but there is the HOA is not actually the right term, it's a condominium association, I believe. Do not quote me on that, because I wasn't here for it.
I call them go-ups, but you know.
Yeah, I think it's condominium association. We would love to transfer that to, it does not, one, we would also select a homeowner association above condo, and we would honestly pick none of the above, because that's the preference. We could just create a couple public elements and fund those. So if you do not mind, what my preference would be is for you all to give me comments as to the best way you would suggest to amend the current documents to adhere to those protocols.
Well, I guess let me clarify. You can have your condominium association separate from the rest of the development. We're not mandating that it be combined.
No, it is.
And what we're saying is, I think also, you don't have to have an HOA, but if you have restrictive covenants and design guidelines, I think the planning commission wants to know what they are.
Then,
But we also ask, how are you
Same
gonna
as
maintain
before.
and pay for and maintain the stormwater ponds and any other public facilities such as the playground? Or
correct.
anything else that's common area? How is the structure set up to maintain those facilities?
Yeah.
I think is what
Through
we're
the,
asking.
through the current arrangement. So just know you all approved an arrangement currently. There is a condominium association that is owned by a singular individual. And all I'm saying is, if you all would suggest to me what you want to amend to that current agreement, I will gladly agree to.
And that
That's all I
applies to
need.
the entire site, is what you're saying, like.
I just don't want to have to start from scratch.
Oh, yeah.
Because somebody did this, it was approved by a council, and
Right,
Dan's
okay,
concerns,
just-
what Dan and I have agreed, his concerns are reasonable. We are on the same page. We're rowing in the same direction. I only want it to not start as, I'm asking you for a condo association. Quite to the contrary, there's currently a disaster of a condo association which was approved by this board or some board for Pocomo. I will agree to amend that, and I would love to do that before March or April. I simply did not create that, so I don't want to be thrown into the, you now need to, whatever. I would like to just start
take
from
it
there.
and it's nothing for this particular project. I think it's lessons learned and go, moving
Yes.
forward, and
Thank you.
that's all it is.
Yeah, exactly, and I agree to those things.
And
Trash is a major concern
we
of
want to
ours.
streamline it for you, we want it just
Exactly.
to make it as easy
Thank
and
you.
everybody's on the same page and all the
Yep.
points are addressed,
Yep.
because we don't want to go there.
And you have 100% support from the only and I don't say that, might have come off arrogant. You have the support of the person whose vote is the only vote in the current condo association. So I will agree to adhere to the reasonable standard. Dan has mentioned 3 or 4 bullet points. I'm like, those are very reasonable bullet points. Those bullet points already exist. I will amend those. So once I know what those are, I would come
So
before you.
you bought out the whole building?
We will be purchasing the entire property.
Okay.
We have not settled yet. Being totally forthright, the way the agreement works is that I will settle within 30 days of all permits being in place. So not only your approval, Dan's approval, everything's approval, so that the day that we settle, you will see a very large group of individuals on that site working.
But the individual units that are there now in the 3-story, 4-story condos, they're individually owned or not?
They are not individually owned, they are owned, they are condominiumized units which have individualized owners because there's a condominium association over the entire property. Those 7 units are all owned by one individual, which also owns the 37 remaining lots, and we will be purchasing the 7 existing lots and all buildable lots. So there will not be a condominium association, it will simply be a fee simple purchase. But as it currently stands, technically, there are 7 votes versus 37 votes. And the 7 votes is the same person as the 37 votes, if that makes sense.
And you will use your 7 votes to update the agreement as needed, is what you're trying to tell us? Okay.
Okay.
We knew we were going
Because
down.
those 7 people,
We knew we were.
those
where we
7
were
people
going
would
with
also
that.
agree to the same standards. You know what I mean? Like right now, those people would want the same thing. And ultimately, I want to be candid, like I have no horse in the race if it's all economics for us. So if my dream scenario is we build 25 units and then the waterfront units are extremely valuable because Pocomoke is blossoming, in which case I really want to sell it. So that's where we make our money.
Yeah.
But at the current economic situation, we need to start building Pocomoke before we start thriving on the waterfront.
So I guess before a motion, just a quick question for you. For Simple Fiber customers, does that need to be on the record that, when we make a vote regarding, because it's a business also owned by this
I don't
developer?
think that's a bad idea at all, so if somebody wants to put that on the record, just to make sure it's not a conflict.
So
Thank you for bringing that up.
I'm currently on pause, but Simple Fiber customer, I receive a favorable rate as a first responder. But I don't personally believe that conflicts me, with making decisions on this property. If anybody, disagrees, please let me know.
I'm not Simple Fiber, so it's on to you.
Well, I do have Simple Fiber at the brewery, but that won't change my decision on the growth of Pocomoke.
Steve, good.
So to be clear, not one person here received a rate based on anything preferential.
Yes.
Yeah. This is a standard rate we offer to anyone that offers the services that help our community like you.
Absolutely, it's not me specifically,
Yeah.
it's a group discount rate that I qualify for from a separate.
No, Dan gets $20 internet, that's great.
All right, do we have a motion for Mr. Davis?
I make a motion that we, approve let me make sure I do this correctly. We approve the floor plans, facades, and conceptual drawings, as presented.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion passed unanimously.
So
Thank
the
you, Mr. Davis.
one final discussion point throughout there, just a personal concern that, I mean, a personal concern I brought up when I wasn't on this body and when the other developer had it. Sidewalks are something that are very, a very soapbox item for me, making sure all the sidewalks are there and in good repair because, obviously we don't have a requirement for that yet, other than in this
In
letter.
other words, if you see children, keep your distance.
But just, that's
sure.
important, and the landscaping plan.
Super reasonable concern.
Yeah.
So I don't have the drawing in front of me as to the exact number of squares that need to be improved. When Dan presented us the site plan, there was a expectation that certain sidewalk improvements were made. I will say that that was not in its totality. So there is sidewalks there that I think are within reason for an expectation that a developer should tackle. And then things like the intersection improvements of sidewalks were not included. Basically, the city gave us a plan in which we will have many sidewalk improvements, including our interior sidewalk improvements. We are glad to adhere to those. My goal also in conversations with Dan was that we could work with the city to obtain state and federal grants for things that are outside of that, and that is something we've done in Salisbury and other places. So we will make sure that it is not left in disrepair. At the same time, we went off the city's expectation of what was within our reasonable scope and what was things that are simply, I don't want to say neglect, but not necessarily my scope of work, if that's fair to say. So we did adhere to what the city's expectations were for replacing sidewalks. Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, good luck.
Awesome.
We look forward to it
Appreciate
in
it,
the
man.
future and please feel free to come back to the planning commission
We will. I'll
with
be
any
back.
changes, comments, or
We're
concerns.
already talking about new areas. Please, I see it every day.
One thing at a time.
I was gonna say, the only thing, I will get up with Dan as to how to adhere for, the concerns as related to the condo association. If you all wouldn't mind sharing your notes, I'll send over the most recent document that we have that was approved, and then, if it's all right with you, my expectation was to receive notes and then respond to them, rather than me say, I'm going to rewrite this whole condo
That's fine.
document.
That's fair.
If that's, okay, awesome. Thank you so much. You have a great night.
Thank you. The state program is the city.
Hey, Dan, we got anything else we got to vote on? I got another meeting I gotta go to.
I'm sorry, what?
We got anything else we got to vote on or anything, cause I got another meeting that I got to
No,
attend.
so we vote on the minutes.
I don't think so. I think that was pretty much where everybody put them.
Approval of minutes, yeah.
Is that all we have?
Yeah, and
The comprehensive plan updates? No, there's no voting.
No vote on that, but if you could vote on the minutes.
Yes,
I can't vote
yes,
on the
yes.
minutes.
Huh?
I can't vote on the minutes.
Right. We're gonna jump to item number 6, approval of minutes of November 20th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from November. Oh wait, I wasn't here either. Was I here in November?
Yes, you were.
Which one I missed?
We didn't have a meeting in December.
Okay. I missed one here recently.
Well, the minutes should say whether or not prepared.
Where we at?
I make a motion to accept the meeting minutes of November 20th, 2024. Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Okay.
Aye. All opposed?
I abstain.
I don't remember which month I missed.
Just an update on the comprehensive plan. City Council did authorize entering into a contract with Peter Johnston and Associates, who did the 2014, thank you,
Thank you, Stephen.
who did the 2014 plan. This is a copy of the proposal that was provided. We got the copy.
Yep.
I left out some of the references and cut down on pages, but, so we will be entertaining a contract with Mr. Johnston. I'll likely invite him to the next planning commission
Cypress Park flood study update, we have anything new?
No new information other than, we did meet with two staff DNR persons last Friday. We walked the riverfront. They're responsible in a couple different areas, and we do have a grant agreement to do an engineering study of the boat launch and boat ramp facilities in the tune of $150,000.
That's not Cypress Park, though. Where's that? Which one are we talking
This
about?
is a different grant, different from the study.
Laurel Street?
I'm sorry, what?
Laurel Street or Winter Quarters?
Both, actually.
Oh.
The engineering study encompasses both boat ramp areas and the surrounding dock facilities. It's to study what is needed to lay the groundwork for applying for repair and improvement grants. It could include ADA access, reconfiguration of any parking and or the ramp itself. So until we do the study, we won't know exactly what's all needed, but we do have a separate $150,000 grant we have to move forward with. That's separate from the Cypress Park flood study. So they came.
What's the date on that grant that has to be, what's the expiration?
I'm sorry, what?
What's the expiration on that, for the boat ramps? What's the expiration of that grant?
We need to start now and have it done within the next year to 2 years, I believe,
So
as
who
far as the
approved?
study.
That's a council approval then, isn't it?
Council approved entering into the grant already. We just gotta put an RFP out to get an engineering
As long as
company.
it's not like, if I
I'm sorry, what?
Something. No down to the wire stuff.
Now,
So-
there,
I think the item you're talking about is not on the agenda, so I don't think that's something we can discuss.
well, it's related to the park improvements because they are making suggestions that would help implement some of the recommendations that came out of the Cypress Park flood study. That's why I
So,
brought it
okay,
up.
so it's related to the resiliency study.
Yeah,
Okay, I didn't realize that came.
yeah, good point. In addition, we've been approached by another engineer, a coalition of individuals from George Mason University, DNR, and the Nature Conservancy that wants to do an additional study of our area. And this ties also into the Cypress Route study, or Cypress Park study, as a follow-up
Just rename it, right?
effort. So they're gonna approach city council about doing some additional look at what can be done from a nature conservancy, natural approach to make improvements to the waterfront area and follow up with some of the recommendations in that study.
So where is that coming from?
They approached us probably 4 to 6 months ago.
And what organization?
I'm sorry, what?
What organization?
It's a
was that?
combination of the Nature Conservancy, some
One in
academic.
DC, or does Maryland have one?
I'm sorry, what?
Does Maryland have one, or is that the
Well, it's a
one
nation,
that
I think
grew
it's
up
a
with down the
it's
street
a
in
chapter,
DC?
I think, of the Nature
Oh.
Conservancy.
Oh,
Academics from George Mason University
I
and
see.
DNR has a coalition that wants to study our area. We qualify, I think, from a socioeconomic standpoint, but they want to do some follow-up. We asked they wait till we adopted or approved the Cypress Route flood study, which we have now, we've accepted it, and they want to do additional follow-up studies for this area.
if I may ask, how did they fall upon Pocomoke?
They have a grant, and I think they're looking for socioeconomically disadvantaged
Okay.
communities to
Mhm.
study further. So we qualify in that area.
Right.
So it's not been decided they're gonna move forward, but it is related to the study,
So
and they wanna
is
do
it-
some additional.
Is it like a report of the ramps and update of the docking? Is that what they're studying?
They are, I think, indicating they wanna see more natural solutions.
There's two different paths he's gone over here. He started with
Yeah.
the boat ramps, and this is something separate.
This is
Right,
something
right.
separate, yeah.
And I'm not sure what your question is then.
I guess it was on the first part of,
He was getting the two mixed.
I kind of went backwards.
Well, I guess can we take one bigger step back, because I'm getting a little confused. Summary recommendations to be provided. So the resiliency study came up with recommendations, and that included things that triggered these other inputs, like the boat ramp and the Nature Conservancy, to look at Cypress, or look at Pocomoke City. Those came as results of the resiliency study?
Yeah,
Understand
and
it.
tie into it. these staffers became aware of the resilience study, and they said, hey, we have additional recommendations and follow-up information that will help
Okay.
implement some of these
That's,
recommendations involving
So
that
before
area.
asking us.
So that's why they approached us. They want to follow up with the Cypress Route study, Cypress Park study. And they made us aware there's this additional grant that we have to follow up and implement as well.
And I'm assuming that the boat launch facility grant is like a DNR and a DNR grant, and that was, I mean, I guess the boating facilities being, and the docks needing attention as part of the flood resiliency. Is that all, I guess that's all tying together?
Yeah, well, the docks are in poor shape. The grants would evaluate their condition, make recommendations.
yeah, that's a
Um,
whole,
There's recommendations possibly to do or eliminate potentially some of the docks that aren't used and make a nature trail along the waterfront as part of it, as an alternative recommendation, which could tie into the Cypress Park area as well. So no action is necessary. I'm just informing Planning Commission that we've been approached by, you know, the
I think
DNR
that's very
staff.
interesting.
Hmm?
I think it's very interesting.
Do you have a copy of the full, so I guess the only thing I ever saw from the resiliency study was like a couple of maps that showed, like, if we add X amount of filter at this level, there were a couple maps provided. So do you have a copy of the full study you can provide out, or, I mean, I don't, maybe it was provided to you guys prior to me joining, but, I
Yeah.
mean,
Certainly.
yeah, I'd like to read
If you
it.
want- If you want to see the $150,000 grant agreement, we'd be happy to send that as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, is there any other, comments, questions, or concerns, or do we have a motion to adjourn?
So the comprehensive plan update, you said the consultant's gonna be here next month, and so we'll be able to ask questions to him directly
Then,
next
the
month.
next meeting?
That's the goal, yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
cause I have questions, but not tonight.
I guess my last question is, back on when we were just talking about, the 150 is gonna be spread amongst all these projects, or is it gonna be a specific project it's for?
Now, the $150,000 is to hire an engineer to study what our needs
So
are.
across the board on all these projects?
Yeah, all along the waterfront area
On the
there,
waterfront.
primarily linked to the boat
Just wanna make
ramp
sure I'm
and
clear.
dock facilities.
Okay.
But
Then the other one is this
they
one.
could broaden out their look along that whole waterfront essentially and make some recommendations.
Did we adjourn?
No, we have not here.
Okay.
You asked for a motion, I
You
think.
Oh, you did? I'm sorry.
You asked for a motion, I don't think anybody
Oh,
made a
because we
motion.
have to make the
Because
motion.
we have,
She
okay.
can make a motion.
Do we
No,
have a
Sharon's not
motion to
supposed to.
She
adjourn?
can.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second,
That's like,
Thank you, guys.
and all in favor?
aye.
All opposed? Okay,
Are we off?
thank you, everybody. Dan, do you want this, drawbridge
No.